Excellent. Well, first of all, it's my great honor and pleasure to speak today and to share perhaps some thoughts based on my over quarter of century experience of working in the United States and keeping very strong connections with Russian science in the last 10 years, in addition to my main appointment at UNC Chapel Hill, being a secondary appointment at Moscow State University. So I guess I want to give my the way how my view from both sides of the mirror of the Sakharov's world, and that's how I called my presentation: Stand United to combat global assault on truth, peace, and human rights. As already was mentioned today, US scientists currently are being prosecuted, charged, and arrested in the name of combating economic espionage by Department of Justice and US government as a whole. And there are numerous cases. Dozens and hundreds of scientists are under suspicion. It's mainly targeting collaborations with China. Most recently, there was a letter which I recommend everyone to read. This is a letter, a call to save Professor Charles Lieber, one of the most notable cases. I don't want to go into details. Generally, I can tell you that accusations against Professor Lieber include or are based on incorrect filling of some quite ambiguous forms and reportings, and they are of great concern, as well as accusations against Professor Chen. More recently, we became aware that Congress may impose funding ban on US researchers in so-called talents programs in China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. This is about very important, in my view, to United States Endless Frontier Act to dramatically increase funding of science, which is, of course, in United States, which is, of course, overdue. And we, of course, understand the need for protecting intellectual property and essentially making sure that the funds directed to research in United States help United States as well as the entire world. But the language which is currently included in this bill, project of a bill, is a concern. If it is approved as is, it would lead to very significant and damaging consequences. It has, in particular, super broad definition of talents programs, which is defined by the presidential memorandum on January 14, 2020. And it's so broad that it would ban normal academic activity, including teaching, education, participation in academic advisory boards, academic societies, reading charging documents against Professor Lieber, whom I mentioned before. One of his transgressions was that he was elected to the Chinese Academy of Science. This bill in the United States could put in jeopardy Americans and citizens of other countries. For example, those who might have legal obligations under some contracts which were perfectly fine before this bill, but then could become prohibited or banned in the United States, and it is counterproductive to the United States. It could deter positive collaborations, result in exodus of scientists abroad, and so on and so forth. Now, let me switch to Russia. One thing I want to mention is that nearly 1,000 Russian-speaking scientists recently, in February, wrote a letter which is focusing on stop growing confrontation and turn to cooperation and dialogue. This letter has been signed originally by over 100 scientists, including 2 living Nobel laureates of Russian origin, many members of various academies, including Russian Academy, and was joined by nearly 900 scientists after it was published. So it's almost 1,000 people letter. And I recommend everyone to read not just this letter report in Nature, but the original letter, which is available by in English and in Russian. Essentially, this letter calls to opposing the chemical weapon. It calls to Russian authorities to respect citizens' right to protest peaceful and establish dialogue with society. And it calls to turn international cooperation to combat global threats. And this particular demand or call is not just addressed to Russians, it is addressed to American government as well, and generally to the entire world. Now, why this letter was written by Russian academics? I guess the short answer is because it was impossible not to write. And what is also very important, that this letter refers to peace, progress, and human rights. These 3 goals are insolubly linked. That's a phrase from Andrei Sakharov's Nobel lecture. Now, if we look at Russia, numerous scholars and increasing numbers are imprisoned, sentenced, and prosecuted for treason and other crimes. And often the prosecution goes in secrecy, so we even don't know what they are accused of. I know we don't have that much time, but I want to read each name. It's incomplete list, but I don't think these names were ever read in the forum of this international magnitude. So this is Viktor Kudryavtsev, physicist, Roman Kovalев, physicist, Anatoly Gubanov, physicist, Valery Mitko, Arctic explorer, Anton Kolomitsyn, historian, Alexei Vorobyov, space engineer, Alexander Fedotov from Belarus, political sciences, Yuri Dmitriev, historian, Andrei Zhukov, historian, Valery Golubkin, physicist, Azat Bevsakhov, graduate student, Vladimir Lapygin, physicist, Natalia Sharina, librarian, and this list is can be continued. And unfortunately, it is growing. Another important thing that is happening, it is a mass assault on popular science and education in Russia. So the amendment has been adopted by Russian lawmakers, which essentially bans any kind of educational activity other than those which are authorized by the state. So in order to give a lecture in Russia, you have to be, it has to be official. Even now, when we are asked to give talks, sometimes universities are requiring us that we sign a contract. And here comes the American ban on interactions with bad countries, which essentially puts the scientists in the block. They can be banned and prosecuted just for giving a scientific talk in Russia. It is opposed, this particular law, by scientists, including the Russian Academy of Science, educators, science journalists, and it has numerous number of negative comments, but it is happening right now. Now, I want to—
2 minutes.
Very good. I want to just reflect on what is in common between all these, I would say, conflicts that is happening. And my take on that, it is the conflict of populism versus professionalism. And it is also the conflict between grassroots and self-organization versus government regulation and control. And that happens across the globe. So this is a global conflict, and it's also is affected by international affairs and worsening the world. So our specialists in social sciences would advise us on the reason why it happens, but these are the main conflicts which we are facing. So what shall we do? First of all, I think we shall overcome, and we have to stand, and we have to stand united. We have to relate the suppression of academic freedom and collaboration by states to bigger issues which are discussed in different countries, such as peace, human rights, cooperation, and global security. We have to relate it to other ongoing conflicts in the states: equity, inclusion, Black Lives Matter in the United States, suppression of peaceful protesters and opposition in Russia, Belarus, and other countries, because they are all same in nature. We have to relate it to populism, anti-intellectualism, spread of untruths, and division, such as, for example, untruths about global warming. We have to unite in support of persecuted scientists today, oppose violation of human rights. I believe we should establish an international academic council on peace, human rights, and cooperation and global security to coordinate and improve understanding across groups of disciplines. And we have to be proactive, speak up, be heard, to address specific concerns, such as, for example, the concern on foreign collaboration ban. We have to talk about that. We have to try to change. Being silent is no option today. Thank you for your attention.